welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng Deep Dive FYI Special Series. Kaya kasama natin yung mga ito, special guest din natin. Of course, Dean G and Dean E. Alright, bago pumasok naman si Prof. Ranjit, Dean Gary and Dean Ederson, thank you so much again for joining us. Marami tayong pag-usapan in the next 40 minutes or so. Dean Ederson, maybe we can start with you and then we can work it from there as we hope to be joined by Prof. Ranjit. First of all, ano yung basa niyo sa state of play? Kasi earlier this week, we had, again, the whole gang, Senator Trillanes, Secretary Ronald, talking about itong mga destabilization plot. Justice Carpus seems to be slightly more optimistic about direction of things with the new ombudsman. But nevertheless, everything is very fluid. Medyo magulo pa rin sa Pilipinas. What's your read, Dean Ed?
Magulo talaga, Prof. Richard, no? I think yung Chinese curse na we're living in interesting times aptly describes what we're seeing right now, no? Medyo, to a certain extent, it's also educational for me and for my students kasi maraming mga nangyari in the last couple of months that have not happened in the past, no? But I'm also worried about what the long-term effects of all of these developments would be to the political development of the country. So I'm keenly observing. Pero syempre, hope springs eternal. Sana meron tayong mga matutunan ng mga importanteng lessons dito sa what's happening right now.
Ikaw, Gary, what is your overall take before we go more into specifics? Aside from the fact that we are more in the era of Lenin, where there are years that go by and
Ah,
nothing happens, and there are weeks that go by that years happen.
mukhang it's very apparent naman that the Philippine state is in flux right now, no? Ang daming mga nagaganap, ang bilis ng mga development, and it seems that both administration and the opposition and the other forces are somehow doing a chess game, no? Try to do some checkmate, pero hindi natin alam paano ito matatapos. And at the end of the day, sabi nga, yung role ng social forces, paano lulugar ngayon, no? So, I think that is an important consideration that we need to examine further, no? Ang problema kasi kung yung mga elite, itong mga to lang ang nag-uusap-usap at decide sa kabuuan ng ating bansa, yan, ano na yung magiging role nga ng social forces to determine our fate and our future. So, yun din sana ang gusto kong makita ng ating mga mamamayan sa mga darating na araw.
Thank you so much for that, Dean Gary. Maybe we can get more specific about what is the state of play. Dean Ed, what is good, what is bad, what is ugly with what's happening right now? Because I'm sure we can read the situation many ways. So what worries you if it's a glass half empty, half full? What are the elements there, and also what are the things na medyo nakakabahala so far or could be down the road?
Well, what worries me is the extent of the problems that we're seeing right now. No, number one, corruption. Everything seems to revolve around that issue. We're not even
Mhm.
talking about anything developmental at this stage. Lahat na lang can be explained
Yeah,
by corruption. No,
corruption.
so to me, corruption is an important issue, but also to a certain extent, it's a lazy argument for all our inefficiencies. No, but I am hopeful in the sense that I think towards 2028 specifically, the argument would really be more towards people demanding some kind of better governance from our leaders. No, um, what is also disturbing for me is that somehow some of the actors now are quite predictable in their action. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is, turuan, saving their kids, etc. But yeah, yun nakikita ko ngayon. But my hope is that really we're able to surpass this problem now and move back to governance and hit the ground running. Uh,
Yeah, Dean Gary, I mean, very important yung point niyo, Dean Ed, on a
Yeah.
lazy excuse for malgovernance. Let's break that down a little bit later on because I think this goes back again to reducing everything to the corruption issue, and corruption is also a symptom of more fundamental problems. No, but before we
Mm.
go into that aspect, Din Gary, I want you to also come in. What are your fears and concerns so far? Ano yung pinaka nakakabahala? But nevertheless, I'm sure there are also things that should be encouraging for us who are activists and who are concerned about changing the political system.
Well, yung sasabi nga ni Dean Ed, gusto ko lang dugtungan yon. Kasi nga, dahil naging overarching problem na natin ay corruption, so babalik ko uli yung elite theory. Papasok dyan yung sinasabi ni Robert Michels na iron law of oligarchy. So, dahil corruption ang primary concern, so dapat talaga babalik uli dyan yung mga kamay na bakal, etc. So, I mean, dahil nga, tignan mo yung mga panawagan ng mga tao, di ba? Hindi lang ikulong, pati bitay, etc. At, you know, uh, nawawala na essentially yung fundamental, for example, yung mga fundamental na issue like yung governance, no? Promotion of inclusive and dynamic governance, working institutions na to turn around yung mga yan. So, isa yun sa mga nakita ko. Isa pang sa mga concern dahil nga ngayon panahon ng populism, no? Either performative populism ba yan or kung anumang uri ng populism, baka pumasok tayo dun sa violent populism which I might uh, uh, I'm very much worried. Sabi nyo nga, sabi sa mga naririnig nga natin ngayon, no, may mga so-called mga galawan, meron daw mga mass mobilizations towards replacing or overthrowing the current government. So baka pumasok tayo dyan sa tawag nating violence populism which we are hindi natin kailangan at this moment. So we need a working and dynamic institutions. We need to address corruption. But at the same time, let's talk about governance. Let's talk about policy. Let's talk about how things should be corrected. No, in our legal framework, in our political system, in of course, it requires also structural reforms. So yun na siguro ang dapat nating tingnan. Hindi lang ito corruption at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go to that part. It's very, very important. Sige, balikan natin yan na Dean Ed and Dean Gary. Uh, Dean Ed, there were people who were talking about, withdrawal support of the military, although General Bronner of the AP played it down. Nevertheless, parang ma-admission na may mga attempts, no, to weaponize basically or hijack even itong mga legitimate grievances ng ating mga kababayan dito sa issue ng korupsyon. Things fortunately did not go in a dangerous direction, pero nevertheless may mga nagbabala na baka naman the next round could be scarier. Meron tayong mga series of protests being organized by, let's just say, shady elements later this month. At the same time, legitimate progressive groups are calling for weekly protests, as we saw in many different countries from Thailand to Indonesia to Nepal, among others. It's easy to hijack, no, or it's easy for these things to get out of control. So, Dean Ed, before we go to Prof. Ranjit, who just joined us, thank you so much, Prof. Ranjit. Dean Ed, what is your read on the destabilization threat so far, and also the probability that this thing could get out of control?
Well, first, well, you also mentioned it, and I am convinced that and there were several attempts to involve the military with what is happening right now. Thankfully, we have a very professional organization, and they don't, as in general, while they do have gripes and they have, you know, valid concerns, they don't want the institution to be dragged into partisan political activities, no? And I know, um, based on my conversations with some of the people inside, that there are really active attempts to court military support. And my hope is that they stop doing this because we've gone a long way in getting rid of whatever vestige of military adventurism we have. And if they get the military to be involved again in this partisan um, in partisan play, then it's going to be again problematic for our democratization effort. Yeah, so I'm watching closely, Prof. Richard, and I hope it's not going to be any successful yung mga ganyang attempts.
Thank you, Dean. I'll go to Prof. Ranjit shortly, but I want Dean Gary also to weigh in on this issue of destabilization. Were we peering into abyss? How much on the precipice were we? Kasi madali naman i-dismiss yung nangyari sa Menjola as sabihin na lang natin pampagulo ng mga Jejemon, di ba? But here sa Oxford, I was just talking to someone from Nepal, no, who almost didn't make it to the UK kasi lahat ng mga dokumentos, lahat ng mga offices daw inatake ng mga grupo, mga gangs. At ang suspetsyon nila dito is bayaran daw ito ng mga corrupt na officials na ayaw mabuking. So sinakyan nila
Mm.
yung mga legitimate, although medyo naging violent na rin, na attacks dun sa mga symbols of power. Pero pati daw yung mga ordinaryong opisina inatak na para kasi gusto nila mawala yung paper trail.
Yeah.
So ang dali pala ma-weaponize ito and it really got out of control in Nepal very, very fast. So Din, what is your concern on this destabilization front issue?
Yeah, I totally agree with your earlier statement, Richard. Nabasa ko yan sa column mo eh. Nilabas mo yan eh. Pero, well, talagang sa ngayon talaga ay tanggapin na natin ang ating bansa at perhaps similar to other countries, very polarized na talaga tayo. Okay, so right now we're competing to what we call sa election, yung market votes, yung mga undecided pa, para ma-ensure natin yung support. So, sabihin, if we're competing, these two groups are really competing who uh, will handle, no? Or sa Game of Thrones, di ba? Sino dapat ngayon ang may hawak niyan? And if we try to compete with power, of course, it requires a lot of things, either hard, soft, or even smart power. Sabi nga ni Joseph Nye. So, kailangan mong gamitin lang lahat ng mga yan. So, at yan ang nangyayari ngayon is that, for example, no, yung soft power, how for social media, itong mga different mga bloggers, mga social media influencers try to convince people for their cause, no? Kung especially kung supporter ka ng mga Duterte or the same time yung mga hindi supporter ng mga Duterte kasi maraming variations yan eh. Or eventually, mukhang papasok sila ngayon sa what we call yung hard power. Kaya may naririnig tayo mga destabilization. At I think, hindi to dapat i-dismiss, no, from my end dahil these people are competing for power right now. So ang maiiwan tayo nasa academe, civil society at ang mga ordinaryong mamamayan, what will be our response at maiwasan na magamit tayo sa maling intensyon at sa maling paraan, katulad ng what happened last time dito nga sa Menjola. Hindi ko sasabing lahat yon ay mali, no? Hindi ko sasabing hindi legitimate yon, but there were certain reports and it was validated on the ground, no? Na may mga group nga, yung mga geng-geng ang tawag nila doon, no? Yung mga geng-geng gang, no? Na ginamit, no? Para lang for a cause ng preservation of their interests.
I know. Prof. Ranjit, thank you so much for joining us. I know everyone is trying to squeeze in their schedules, so I'm so happy. It's almost a miracle with all of us together. I think
Yeah.
welcome natin.
I just came from class, ha? Straight from class,
I know.
Malakas
Thank
ka
you
talaga
so
sa
much,
akin, Richard.
Prof. So, kumbaga, ituloy nyo lang yung discussion siguro niyo sa class. So, what is the good, what is the bad, what is the ugly with the general state of affairs before we go even more specific about the direction of the anti-corruption initiatives or investigations right now? Ano yung big picture take nyo, Prof. Ranjit? What is the forest here before we talk about the trees?
I think it's important for us to recognize first that we are in a political crisis. That without saying, is where we are now. No? And the way forward is for us to accept that there are things that need to be changed in the short and the long term, and that will require a whole of nation approach. Number two, and I just can't reveal the data the way we normally reveal data in your shows, but I've asked permission from the people who commissioned me, and they've commissioned not just once, twice, but already three times. A great majority of Filipinos do not support military intervention in the country. And we have data on that. And in fact, Richard, just that people say hindi ako nambobola, I'll show you the data. I'm asking permission from the people who have asked me to survey this question, to probe this question. Democracy is still the number one system in town. There's no other game in town. People still support democracy. Are they satisfied? Well, that's a big problem. In fact, we're going to release data this next week about how people are satisfied or dissatisfied with our democracy, but they're not willing to change it to any other system And an overwhelming majority of Filipinos will not support a military intervention in politics of any type. So let's be clear. The military is not supporting this. Nobody in civil society is supporting this, and obviously we also understand that it's self-serving. No, there's no real principle. There's no real advocacy for governance being pushed. It's really a naked grab for power, and therefore the government has to take this attempt seriously. Yes, it's the real legitimate grievances. Yes, we need to reform. Yes, we cannot downplay, as Dean Gary has say, minimize all this protest, no? And there is dissatisfaction among certain quarters, but it is not supported. There's data to show, not just once, but almost 3 quarters, no? That there is no support for any sort of military intervention in politics. In fact, there's high trust and performance or approval ratings for military and uniformed personnel because they have stayed professional and stayed out of politics. There's no strong support for people, this kind of coup d'etat like initiatives. But that being said, there's a real problem, and that you're seeing that in the latest surveys we're going to release, some level of dissatisfaction with both the governance in our country today, the state of governance in our country today, and also satisfaction with democracy. So it's the whole system has taken a hit. We need to take the protests seriously. We take the anger of the people seriously, but we need to channel it to some sort of reform agenda that's manageable. That will be significant, no, in the medium to long term.
Absolutely. We'll talk about the reform agenda later on, but I'm still trying to break this down. Dean Ed, now let's go into the weeds, no? So we discussed the forest. Now let's go into the trees, or at least portions of the forest. Okay, I'll just throw it out this way. What do you think of the way by which and the timing of Marcos Jr.'s approach to this issue? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, there's no question about his intention. He truly, indeed, is against corruption. Let's just say Ferdinand Marcos is against corruption. In terms of strategy and timing, what is your read of this? Because from what I gather from talking to people in different branches of the state, many of his closest allies were caught off guard. Many people were wondering, where on earth is this going? Some people thought maybe the intention was good. Maybe the timing was inevitable with all the flooding and kapalpakan ng flood control. But there should have been more calibration and more method to this. And precisely because there was an absence of that, you had this zarzuela of Congress versus Senate, senator versus senator, right? And the thing was really getting out of control, getting very hot. And I think it was quite worrying when Cheese was trying to attack the former Speaker of the House. And you could see this could like get out of control. And now you even have Lacson relinquishing the position of Blue Ribbon Committee as the stability of the entire Senate institution came under stress. So this doesn't look a very well planned situation if ever it were planned. Was this inevitable?
Well, I think, Richard, I generally agree with what you're saying. Perhaps the intention was really good because it was about exposing an important problem in society. However, well, those of us in the academe and perhaps even our friends in the media can say what we want to say without, looking at the end game, because that's really our role as maybe thought leaders, or in your case, a public intellectual. But presidents don't have the luxury of that kind of recklessness, if you ask me. So that when you come up with a major policy agenda or a pronouncement, you have to make sure that you see the end even before you actually say it. And my read is that while it's true that it appealed to a certain segment of society when he said it in the sauna, the things that happened after that are already beyond the control of those who are responsible for putting it in the front and center of the discussion. There were already resignations on the co-equal branches of government, and it does not end. And you have an agency such as the ICI, who's supposed to salvage all of this situation and put some more method into the madness that we're seeing. But it seems to be doing, not too much in the sense that it's not giving us proper information about what's going on. Cases have been somehow, we're still dragging, and we don't really know what's happening inside the ICI investigation. So to me, it's a bad example of a policy agenda that you can think of, no? It's like naisip mo lang ngayon and then you say it out loud and then bahala na what happens. And that's exactly what's happening right now. See, you have good intentions. You have an important factor in public policy, in public administration, but you have to think it through. There are many different dimensions that you have to think of, not only the optics of it, like what would be the implications to national security, what would be the implications to the relationship between and among the branches of government, even national local relationship. All of that has to be thought through, and my sense is that there was a lack of preparation on the part of the president's men and women when they brought it out in the sauna.
I mean, that's quite dramatic. We were all at that sauna, and two of the gentlemen just behind the president are no longer in positions of power, and one is probably way more in trouble than the other. We just don't know how forthwith, no? Din Gary, I mean, what is your read of this? I mean, we were all there when he said, "Mahiya naman kayo." I think a lot of us took it as half seriously, but we're wondering exactly hindi lang what's the end game, what's the game here? Like, what is the plan? I mean, what are you gonna do about it, diba? Even the ICI, like hanggang ngayon, like ano ba talaga mandato niya, ano yung membership niya? Things are in flux. I mean, probably part inevitable, but part not so inevitable.
Yeah.
Ikaw, guy, what is your read of this?
Ako, well, perhaps using the public policy process from the agenda setting hanggang sa project implementation, may problema along the way. So, uh, sino man ang naging arkitekto at nagsabi kay Presidente na dapat ito ang maging tenor ng kanyang SONA, hindi pinag-isipan yung buong process ng public policy process. Now, when you set the agenda setting, for a fact that, kailangan may policy formulation and evaluation hanggang sa implementation ito. So, hindi ito isang statement lang. And this is really something happened, no? When the president mentioned yung mahiya naman kayo. So nakakahiya ngayon ang nagsabi dito sa kanya dahil posible kasing mag-circle back ba ito sa administrasyon, hindi lang mako-cover ang opposition. So mukhang gano'n dahil nga tatamaan talaga yung kanyang mga alyado, tatamaan yung kanyang mga kakampi, no? And to some extent even yung sa kanyang mga tao, no? So hindi lang yung past administration, no? So how it was presented, how it was framed, I think hindi galing from a governance and public administration specialist. Baka si Prof. Ranjit mas kabisado kung saan galing yung ganitong uri ng programa na tingin ko kinapos. And at the same time, hindi alam pa paano ito tatapusin if I will use yung public policy process.
Yun nga, kung daan matuito, para medyo na bulldozer itong situation na ito eh. Prof. Ranjit, what is your read of this anti-corruption drive of this president compared to the previous ones? Medyo wild ba ito or you think there's a method to the madness?
I think I think wild and madness are really appropriate words. No? Okay, don't get us wrong, Richard. Now we're all in agreement that the president was right in revealing this. But there was a way of doing this without, throwing the baby, so-called the baby with the bathwater. It's good that he revealed it, number one. Number two, of course, it's inevitable, no? The buck stops with him. He's been there for 3 years, and this is only something that he discovered. Everybody knew that this was happening. Number three, what's the end game? I mean, of course, for us public policy people, we're hoping that institutional reforms will be started. They won't happen overnight. Okay, but it's not clear when he started it that he had a strategy or even an end game, a vision of how this will end. Because how it has transpired is really madness. He has basically destroyed his political coalition in the House and in the Senate. I know I'm moving. Now it's official. He's a lame duck president. I mean, we thought that he had so much gravitas still, even after the midterm. It was
unnecessary to have revealed it in this particular way. They could have done this more systematically. And in the end, now we're paying the price with a poorly planned, poorly executed, or poorly conceptualized policy, which based, in my view, they could be wrong, is more a PR stunt than and performative initiative rather than a serious call for reform. Because if you mean what you say and say what you mean about reforming this, it could have started by slowly pushing in executive orders, slowly changing the way DPWH did the stuff that they did. And then, of course, building institutions to prosecute, di ba? In the end, you have the ICI, but it's not really the institution to fight all of this because it's a weak institution. So now, again, we're looking at how the game was conceptualized. What did we gain after this? And in the end, he's the president. What was the political gain of all of this? A few points from SWS. We don't know. So Okta, we haven't seen. I'm sure he's going to gain something, but it's a Pyrrhic victory. To have revealed all of this, which was right in the first place, but there's what we're arguing, there was a process that could have been done better, no? And a reform agenda associated with this revelation, with opening this kind of worms. But really, what's the political gain for him? He's lost everything. I mean, in my view, he's lost his political coalition in the House. He's lost his political coalition in the Senate. Some of his own allies are now in hot water, no? In deep trouble. Maybe rightly so. Maybe this is karmic. Alam mo yun? Parang hindi na pag-isipan na mabuti itong itong plano na to. Now, hindi natin sinasabi na mali. We're not saying na mali yung pag-reveal niya. Tama to, I think now more than ever. But it seems clear to us who are looking from outside that the target taking out certain individuals. But yun nga, we don't throw the baby with the bathwater because of this. And if we're opening up a can of worms, there's no going back. We need reforms. And, we have to be brave enough, courageous enough to face the music and see how far the reform process will go. And it will definitely end with his own office. There's no, I mean, the buck, Harry Truman, the buck stops with him. This is, tama si Dean Ed, tama rin si Dean Gary. This is more than just a legislative issue. It's even an implementation problem. At the heart of this is DPWH, a corrupt institution. I'm not saying everybody there is, but right now what we're seeing is a systemic corruption in a government agency. It's not the only government agency that has that. Siyempre, it's an implementation issue. It's an executive issue. Can you imagine, tinanggal pala ng secretary niya yung, tinasan yung cap sa regional and district level. That's why corruption became so rife. Number two, during the Duterte administration, tinanggal din yung civil society or LGU, what you call this, a partnership with DPWH, meaning LGUs are supposed to certify projects were actually created on the ground. So a lot of this could have been done, in a more predictable, in a manner that we can calculate and produce the same results, maybe even better, instead of the kind of political noise that we're in, where you just shotgun the whole process. And now we have all this chaos, no? And all this talk about destabilization. Maybe this is also for us a lesson, no? That if we want to start a reform process, we have to have a plan from start to finish.
Yeah, so let's talk about the much more methodical and correct agenda shortly. But last one before I go there, Dean, let's start with you. Where do you see the new ombudsman coming into the picture? Some are seeing it as a potential coup de grace. Some will also look at the ICI and say that's exactly why we think this is a mess, right? Because para ang gulo ng situations. If anything, the ICI has added more to the controversy rather than make the situation less complicated and more methodical in that sense. So how do you see the new ombudsman and the ICI, those elements coming in? Because ultimately, especially with both Senate and Congress clearly neither having the capacity nor capability to investigate themselves, as we saw most recently with the dramatic withdrawal of Lacson from the Blue Ribbon Committee, this really goes down to our judicial institutions, right? And yet, And yet,
Yeah, well, you have two institutions here, the Office of the Ombudsman and the ICI, who have at their disposal the ability to somehow slow down the problem that is facing our country right now. How do they do that? In the case of Secretary Remulla, Ombudsman Remulla now, the Office of the Ombudsman has enormous powers against those who are accused of malfeasance, misfeasance, and whatever shenanigans in government. And I think what they should do, hand in hand with the ICI, is file the appropriate cases as soon as possible and let them run their natural course under our judicial system with close monitoring on the part of the public. No, look, I'm sure there are people who are wary of the appointment of Ombudsman Remulla because of his political connections and what have you. I myself would have wanted somebody who's more, should we say, independent, if you will. Pero nandyan na yan eh. So what he can do at this time would be to demonstrate to the people that he really means business. And how does he do that? File cases now. We've seen enough already. We've seen enough evidence already to warrant at least the initiation of criminal proceedings against those who are responsible. But I have yet to see any case that has been filed against a major government official. Yes, cases have been filed against the contractors, but what about major government officials? We're still waiting. Now, what about the ICI? They have to do a better job at communicating to the people. I really don't know what's happening there, save for the optics about the surrender of the luxury vehicle, certain individuals going there, but other than that, substantively, I really don't know what they're doing in ICI. So I think they have to do a better job at also communicating to the people. So two institutions who have enormous responsibilities now, they have to start acting. They have to use whatever power is given to them by the Constitution and by whatever statutory law, by executive orders, and make sure that cases are filed as soon as possible against possible erring individuals.
absolutely. Dean Gary, how do you see the new ombudsman element here, and also whatever is the latest iteration of the ICA or version of it? Because Remulla, in fairness to him, first order of things already discussed pushing with cases against potential against Sara Duterte kasi andyan na daw yan. I mean, that's pretty a big fish, especially with the impeachment situation. Let's be honest, especially after the change in the leadership of the Congress, really up in the air, to put it mildly.
Ako, I think pwedeng maging game changer itong ating ombudsman, no? Especially at the helm si Ombudsman Remulla, considering the fact na perhaps medyo nasa twilight na rin siya ng kanyang career, no? Kasi 64 na ata siya, tapos tandaan natin kaagaling niya lang din sa mga two major operations, di ba? To some extent. So tingin ko nandun ka na sa period, no? Siguro kung dumating tayo sa ganyang panahon, no? Mauna lang si Professor Ranjit dyan, na you're trying to make a legacy and you're trying to make, a substantive contribution. Kasi ano pa pwede mong gawin? So, kung ang kanyang first order of the day is to hit the ground running, definitely, yung nga, buksan na talaga itong salin ng mga tao, accessibility, i-reverse na yung ginawa nung dating ombudsman si Martires. At the same time, yung sasabi nga ni Dean Ed, talagang mag-sample na ng mga dapat filean. Kasi, if not mistaken, di ba, meron namang moto propyong uh, kapangyarihan, no? Ang ombudsman to investigate and even to, to immediately to file cases. So I think, sana by Monday, may mga makita talaga tayo, may mga kasuhan na from Farmally scandal, kung iba pang mga frigate missile scandals, etc. na yan. And saka yun, yung flood control. Kailangan balansin niya maigi to para makita rin ng mga mamayan na ang ating ombudsman ay hindi lang naman kumikiling sa isang grupo. So I think the best way to do that right now ay kasuhan yung mga those who are involved during the past administration at sa ngayon para mas tumaas uli yung trust at yung respeto ng mamayan. And that perhaps will determine, no, yung magiging role ng ombudsman in bringing back, no, the trust ng ating mamayan sa ating gobyerno.
Yeah, thank you, Din Gary. I know you have to also go shortly, so let's go to the last but important part of this discussion. Maybe Prof. Ranjit, some points on the ombudsman situation, but I want us to transition to, okay, ano ba yung dapat mangyari ngayon? Andito na nga tayo. The good news is at least marami sa ating mga kababayan ay nakita natin, they were able to show not only their patriotism, but commitment to their civic duty, no? At civic action, at least for some of us, that was the biggest peaceful protest or rally I've seen in the Philippines, at least over I mean, since basically EDSA DOS, diba? So there are definitely good points there. There's an energy there. There's a harnessing of that energy. But nevertheless, what is the reform agenda you're looking at to get this right in the next few months and so? Para hindi ito performative, hindi rin ito zarzuela. Nakamute ka, Prof. Ranjit.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with my colleagues here. It really starts with enforcement of the law. No? Since this is really an implementation issue, one thing is for sure, we need to enforce existing laws. And the thing about the Philippines, we have extensive anti-corruption institutions and laws. It's just that they're not implemented. And the ombudsman plays a key role there, no? We're hoping that it's simple here, you know. Vince Dizon just discovered with the help of the AFP that 400 out of 8,000, I think, projects are ghost. Start with that. That's 400 cases already. You know, instead of going through this long process of finding out who's the politician, because which is harder, no? These are 400 cases of ghost projects already documented. All you have to do is the case build and start filing cases. I think people will start believing in government, as our colleagues have already stated. If some people are go to jail, no, are really imprisoned because of this kind of malfeasance, this kind of corruption. We have to understand, no, the perspective of everyday Filipino is that, and you look at the data on this. How long does it take to prosecute a corruption case? It's averaging around 7 years. Okay. What is the conviction rate? It's around 40%. Today, I was talking about it with my class. One of my students asked me, does crime pay in the Philippines? How can you now say that crime does not pay? When, number one, it takes 7 years to prosecute a simple corruption case. Okay, and then you have 60% chance of winning. So we have to change that. And going back to your question about the gender, we have to really reform, strengthen the judicial institutions, strengthen the ombudsman. Maybe, ironically, we may have to reconstitute the ICI into a PCGG-like structure, to start collecting, getting all these ill-gotten wealth, no? Because there are 400 ghost projects. Imagine that's just from 2022 to 2025. Wala pa yung mga from the last administration, which we know exists, no? And so that alone, we need to create an institution, a permanent institution, just to get the money back to the people. Number 3, Congress has to rethink the budget process. I think one thing's for sure, you bring people back in. Congress right now, the budget process is, Din Gary, Din Ed, di ba klaro naman, no? When we learn, one way of looking at corruption is that it exists in spaces, in administrative spaces, where there's monopoly of power, wide discretion, and an absence of accountability and transparency. Kids, friends, that's the budget process of the Philippines, no? I mean, the way everybody's telling us the story, it's exactly that. So what do we need to change? I think we need to bring people back into the process, from the way it's conceptualized to how it is allocated, even during the congressional period. Today or yesterday, Chairman Swan Singh of the Congress took away nearly 30 billion, little over 30 billion out of the unprogrammed funds. Kaya ko pala eh. What we say and say what we mean, that we understand people's anger, all congressmen and senators should go on a movement for zero infrastructure allocations that are not part of the priority NEP infrastructure, zero allocations for flood control in particular, zero allocations after the BICAM. So alam mo yun, just to respond to people. Now, I know this is short term and maybe symbolic, but really the money we can save can be allocated to expenditures that really matter to the people. People really want ayuda. 6 out of 10 Filipinos or 7 out of 10 Filipinos need it. That's what our surveys are saying. Whether it's AKAP, IX, TUPAD, whatever it is, they need it. Everybody needs a little help now, not just the very poor. Number two, education and health will really solve poverty issues. And we need 2,000-3,000 classrooms. Number four, we just had a very bad earthquake sa Davao. We had a very bad earthquake a week ago sa Cebu. Let's not touch the unprogrammed funds too much because we need a flexible fund to deal with emergencies. Kasi the tendency is to overdo it na, take away all these flexible funds. I think we should leave a flexible fund so government can be proactive or even just simply react to calamities. And I'm sure there's going to be, we pray for the people in Davao area, and Mindanao. They're going to be badly affected by this massive earthquake. So let's not touch the flexible funds, but let's take away the discretion of lawmakers to add to already established infrastructure development plan and programs of the government. Let them spend it on health and education. That will help the people more. Sabi nga sa akin ng barbero ko ninanakaw lang pala yung pera, di bigyan na lang sa tao diretso. I mean, that was while cutting my hair, I felt he was very passionate about it. Sabi ko, baka
the hair looks good, so he seems to be calibrated in his passion. Yeah.
It's okay naman, di ba? Pero ang point doon, kung inananakaw lang naman ang pera, bigyan na diretso sa tao. So wag lang,
hindi maglagay from project sa barbero mo.
People need it, even the lower middle class. Oo nga, kailangan ko rin sa kalina. Pero ang point ko, he was making sense, no? Everybody needs a little help, no? And ayuda doesn't mean just giving it directly. It could be in all these types of subsidies that can help the poor, the near poor, even the lower middle class. Inflation is still high. I think some real good can happen if that momentum you said can be harnessed towards a movement for good government.
Absolutely. I know Dean Gary has a meeting, so maybe Dean Gary, we can start with you, and I want to add with Dean Ed because I want to also deconstruct atong corruption focused understanding of our politics, because obviously there are many other elements to this. Hindi lang corruption. Lahat naman ng bansa at some point had vote buying, including United Kingdom, including Sweden. So all of us, all countries were in this boat at some point in time. So the question is, how do we get from that point to a better point? But Dean Gary, maybe start with you, and also the element of ano naman dapat gagawin ng progressive or so-called pink movement groups. How can they make sure that they responsibly contribute to this and not actually, I'm not saying they're going to be manipulated, but not let's just say unintentionally strengthen the hands of, or strengthen the dark hands, to put it that way. Yeah.
Siguro, I think it's a responsibility of everyone beyond the progressive forces, political parties. In fact, maganda yung sinabi ng SEA president recently, nung nagkaroon sila ng activity, I think a week ago, na sinasabi niya, paano na kaya yung Catholic social teaching, kasi maraming mga graduate halimbawa ng mga private schools, private Catholic schools na ngayon ay nai-involve sa usapin ng corruption. So, in a sense, even yung ating mga universidad, kami halimbawa dito sa De La Salle, baka we have to also rethink the way we conduct our Catholic social teaching. Ito pa ba ay relevant? Ito pa ba talaga ay, nakapagbigay ng opportunity para mabago ang perspective ng mga tao? Because right now, it seems na normalize na natin yung corruption, yung impunity, di ba? So, ito yung mga tingin ko baka critical moment sa atin. Kaya even academic institutions where we belong, importante rin talaga magkaroon ng soul searching, no? At paano ba aayusin ito? At hindi lang ito magsisimula by, waiting for a new laws to be passed, sino dapat na ma-convict. Dapat ngayon pa lang, unti-unti, babalikan natin ano yung mga sinasabi natin sa ating mga estudyante, sa ating mga komunidad, sa ating mga partners institutions. Gaano ba kaimportante ngayon na ang problema kinakaharap natin ay beyond corruption, that there's a need for more structural and electoral reforms. No? Ah, naalala ko dati sinasabi ko nga sa mga estudyante ko na yung pag-corruption lang ang problema ng bansa, baka we might barking on the wrong tree. Hindi lang yan ang problema. Hindi ko sasabing, I'm not playing the role of corruption in the Philippines right now, which is very high, sabi nga mga kanina. Pero at the end of the day, this should also be accompanied with structural reforms, electoral reforms, social reforms. Tingin ko yan dapat ang tingnan natin, ang maging dulo ng lahat ng mga nangyayari sa ating bansa ngayon.
Uh, Salamat din, Gary. And I want to end with Dean Ed on this, no? Although folks are more than welcome to add on later on if you want to add something in your closing notes. But Dean Ed, this is important, right? Because ayan na, let's be honest, there's a whole cottage industry of Dan Matuid, basically reducing everything to corruption. Now, I see the moral resonance of that. I can see as the great Barbero of Prof. Ranjit mentioned, babalikan natin yung kwentong Barbero na yan, no? Like, clearly, it's something people can relate to. Kasi, niyakaw yung pera natin. But then again, for anyone who has any basic idea of how the world works. All countries were corrupt at some point. In fact, the levels of corruption in the Philippines are very comparable to relatively more developed countries like Thailand or Turkey, right? We're almost at the same level. So I don't think it really explains poverty and everything. So some people are saying maybe it's more an effect than a cause. That in fact, if you develop the economy, build the middle class, strengthen payments and wages for your bureaucracy, for your media, inevitably you're going to move towards basically the modernization theory, right? What is your read on this, Dean Ed? This whole, again, I understand the moral resonance, but I don't think it's analytically very helpful for coming up with an idea of for a blueprint of reform, structural reform for that matter.
I think we're all prone to the fever of the times. That's why the argument of the day is really just corruption, corruption, corruption. No, and we're not saying that it's not important. It is important, but it has to be contextualized, looking at the bigger picture. No? As you correctly mentioned, corruption is not really the only problem when it comes to underdevelopment. There are a host of other structural issues that we can talk about. No, but I think it's going to take a lot of our time if we start doing that. But the point is that we have to think deeper about structural design and economic policy, for example, if we want to really leap forward and then go back to that modernization theory that you were mentioning earlier. And then I have always maintained that corruption is a lazy argument. It's important, but it cannot be the end all and be all of all problems associated with development. Now, having said that, we have at our disposal also as academics and as in the case of Richard Heydarian and Ranjit Rai, public intellectuals, we have the at our disposal the capacity to introduce meaningful reforms in the discourse. For example, let's look at the controls that were removed during the Duterte administration and perhaps bring them back into the control mechanisms that would prevent this kind of thing from happening once again. I've seen a sort of compromise between efficiency on the one hand and anti-corruption mechanisms on the other. We have to find that sweet spot where we could still foster both normative values. No, there are some practical suggestions that we can think of. For example, it's time for us perhaps to rethink about the position of DPWH vis-a-vis flood control. Do we need to have some kind of mechanism that would involve more agencies, perhaps also include civil society, that would not only quantitatively but also qualitatively look at each proposal so that it conforms with international standards and the pricing that goes with it, no? I think they should also think of tapping into the expertise of people from the universities that obviously this will not work, no? Some of the projects that we've seen, kahit hindi ka siguro engineering graduate, alam mong hindi pa pwede yan sa flood control, ang basic issues like that. And right now, we can also do a flagging of contractors who do low bids all the time and at the same time come up with poor work product. At the very least, that they should be blacklisted from the process, and the blacklist should be meaningful and realistic, not only 1 year. No, so I think a combination of both long-term structural reforms, Richard, and at the same time immediate things that we can do. One thing that I'm going to advocate for is really to make the ICI more permanent than it is. The basis of the creation of the ICI is an executive order. You have a new president a few years from now, can easily revoke the ICI. There has been already a proposed legislative measure that would make it more permanent, perhaps akin to what Prof. Ranjit was saying about a while ago about PCGG level type of thing. So that's something that we have to take seriously.
Absolutely. Prof. Ranjit, I'll come back to you. Um, I mean, as long as you have vote buying, there's an incentive for corruption, right? I mean, it's an ROI issue. So how do you break that cycle of incentives? No, how do you create a new matrix or disincentivize the corrupt people from running to begin with and bring down the entry barriers for non-corrupt people to run for office and win for office? How do you do that? And also on the part of progressives and pinks, what should they do as a third force? Because they had a show of force on September 21. Apparently, it's not just Duterte versus Marcos.
Yeah, we're going to release new surveys. They just finished processing it, and yeah, a big chunk of who are supporting reform are now identify themselves as independents, and still a large chunk of our own voting population do not consider themselves pro or anti Duterte, pro Marcos or pro Duterte, and or pro Pink, no? Although that number is also rising. Yeah, I'd like to echo the points of my colleagues. No? Number one, nothing will happen unless we do institutional reform. And when we say institution, the bare bones definition is really the rules that provide incentives for behavior of actors in a political setting. No? So what are the basic rules? You know, the laws, uh, our Congress. If we can reform that, that will provide an incentive or disincentive for certain types of behavior. Number two, I think oversight, prosecution. You have to strengthen the conviction rate in this country. Nobody goes to jail for corruption. Hardly anyone does. Okay. The last time we made a statement was Napoles pa. Ever since that time, it's been failure after failure. Everybody gets away. Okay, so we have to reform that, no? Number three, the budget process. I think people's audit. You see, it starts really with institutions now, Richard, and that's and Dean Gary was right. This context of corruption, or this corruption has a context, and it will require us to not just look at reforms to prevent corruption from happening, many of which are already on laws. No, it says that the implementation is bad. We have to look at reform of our party system. Diba? One of our friends, no, I think a common friend, suggested snap election. A serious reform
Is
agenda
this
is
the
not
same
snap
person who
election.
said repentance? How did we go from repentance to snap?
You're adding na, ikaw talaga. Oh. You have an issue with this guy. No,
I
I'm
think
kidding.
it's
I'm
the
kidding.
other way
But it's
around.
a common friend. It's a friend, no? Okay.
Yeah.
So well-meaning as the suggestion is, instead of the slap election, as Dean Gary was suggesting, let's look at if you want true reform to happen and things to happen really long term, we have to consider an anti-political dynasty law. We have to consider, let's say, reforming our party list. So many of the contractors are in the party list. And simply taking out the 3% ceiling and expanding the 2% floor to 5% will change politics in our country, at least in the lower house. No, can you imagine? Akbayan will have more seats, no? Maybe 10, 20 seats. The value of the actual vote, and that bringing in the progressives. You're talking about these kinds of reforms really work. Political dynasty will probably work better if we have a progressive political party reform act, and an electoral reform act that will come with it, no, where we don't privilege money, electoral politics is not determined by who is the richest candidate. So all of these reforms put together with focus target reforms against corruption, which I think the most important is prosecuting. If we don't have a better conviction rate than we have now, I don't think corruption will end. We need to improve our courts. We need to strengthen the ombudsman. We need to institutionalize the ICI as a practice. And we need to bring back people into the governance process. Because
Uh,
in the
Prof.
end,
Ranjit, are you
let's go
saying
back.
that,
People make
sorry,
government work. Alam mo
this
yon?
is very
It's
important.
not just institutional reform, but it's also
Yeah.
people.
Yun nga, like, that's a very important point. I keep on coming back to that when I try to explain yung penal populism ng Duterte, that
Yeah.
a lot of problems we're seeing is that it's a failure in institution we don't pay attention to. I don't even know how
Yes.
many people know about the ombudsman and its mandate. Parati natin
It's
bigyan ng
very powerful, huh?
exact, very powerful, but very few people know about it. Although I cannot blame
Yeah.
them. Wala namang ginawa yung dating ombudsman. But
And it's being
can we talk about
weaponized by
that?
every
Yeah.
administration, by the way. It's being weaponized by, it's like the insurance policy of everybody. After you leave, you put your ombudsman in so nobody will file a case against you. But under Secretary Mulya, we're hoping it will be progressive. We'll put some people in jail, will show that the system works. And when people begin to trust it, then that's where the true change comes in, because individuals stop thinking as individuals and start thinking as citizens. Because in the end, you vote for these politicians. If politicians are at the root of the evil here, then let's vote for progressives, diba? Let's build a space for progressives to come in. And I think they can come in the party list. You have a new party list law, you'll get more progressives coming in. Number two, we have to vote for progressive candidates, and that will require people like us doing voter education. Because in the end, people make government work. What we do as individuals is more important than any anti-corruption government initiative, okay, is undertaken. When we start thinking as less as individuals and more citizens, look what happened in the September 21. I mean, a total reorganization happened. We kicked out the Speaker of the House. We kicked out the Senate President. All this has started. This movement has started. So when people are involved, things change. And that, I think, is the story of our own republic. The more people are engaged, the broader and deeper our democracy becomes.
Is there any bright spot, Prof. Ranj? I mean, puro negative tayo, which is based really on facts. But is there something that has also encouraged you, Prof. Rai, with the level of activism or renewed activism we're seeing nowadays?
My students, I was just in class 30, 40 minutes ago. No, that's why I'm late. No, I had the class until 1 o'clock. And I'm so impressed by the activism of the kids. They're more involved now. They're better informed. Well, I don't know if they're better informed. No, there's so much misinformation also. But as far as this issue is concerned, they're very well informed. A lot of them joined the September 21 rallies. But what can do, diba, as individuals? Or is it hopeless? We can't do anything. And I think that's the question, Filipinos. But the fact of the matter is, you can do something. One can join their communities in advocating, more civic engagement in governance, especially monitoring these so-called public works projects in their own communities. The more we're involved, the better governance becomes, because people make, in the end, people make governments work. And I think it goes back to citizenship and leadership. Institutional reform, yes. I was with Father Robert this morning. He sent, not with him physically, but texting him, and he sent me the position or paper of a big chunk of the church, no, and basically saying no to snap election. Let's focus on conscience, agency, the individual, because at some level, that still matters. No, the kind of public officials we vote into power, the kind of officials who work in government, conscience is important. Institutional reforms will only go a certain level if people are determined to corrupt it. It will be corrupted, and that's why prosecution is important. That's why we have to rethink tenure in certain positions. That's why we have to bring more transparency and accountability in the process by, let's say, bringing people back in to public works or infrastructure projects, where there was a very famous case study at Abra many years back when you were still a student. I think that kind of people's participation is important, because they were, from the start to the finish, they were there. Now we're going to use technology, of course. We're going to try to improve procurement, but that will only go so far if people we don't vote people into power, good people into power, that's going to be a problem. And that's where the progressive forces have to focus their efforts in voter education, trying to say that there's hope and that it will start with individuals acting as citizens.
On that note, thank you very much, Prof. Ranjit Rai, and of course, Sing Dalong Din, who had to go ahead. We had
Yeah.
1 hour, at this maganda yan, we had a 1 hour full of conversation, and shout out, of course, dun sa Barbero mo. He has done a fantastic
Yeah,
job. Maybe
oo.
I have to visit him also soon.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want to also close on this note, our prayers with our kababayans, both in Mindanao and also in Cebu, particularly also in Davao.
Yes.
In some areas who are affected by this. Again, I hope people realize we're all in this together, and I hope people will
Yes,
avoid
that's it.
partisanship and politics in the midst of this shared misery and difficulties we're facing in this country. Mabuhay ka, Prof. Ranjit. Maraming salamat.
Yes.
Looking forward to
Thank you.
catching up with you soon. God bless po. Have a lovely day.
God bless. God bless. Thank you.